Okay, so tell us how you became interested in telling us about the story of the Nazis lifting all of these precious artworks during World War II.
My interest in telling the story of these Monuments Men really was driven by moving to Florence in 1996. I was living there and walked across the Ponte Vecchio one day, the only bridge not destroyed by the Nazis when they fled the city in August 1944. And I wondered how, in the face of the most destructive conflict in history, a war that cost the lives of 65 million people, did so many works of art survive, and who were the people that saved them? And I didn't know what the answer was. I wasn't embarrassed about that, but I was hugely embarrassed. It never occurred to me to wonder. And I started asking friends of mine that were Europeans, and they said, well, I don't know, I never thought of it either. And that's how it unfolded. I mean, I really was kind of lured into this in a way out of curiosity, because World War II is the most documented, photographed event in modern time, and yet this is an epic story that took place not too long ago, 60 some odd years ago, that we don't know about, that the average person doesn't know, that goes to these museums and enjoys these works of art, who we have to thank for the fact that they survived.
Right, and how many times it has exchanged hands.
Yes. Well, this is an important part. I mean, oftentimes I think that museums would have more connection with audiences if they hung pictures backwards, because that's where all the great stories are. Who owned it, who was cheated out of it, when it was lost during a war, when it was found in a salt mine. And this has been going on, of course, for the period of time these paintings have been in existence. And then allow the public to look at the work of art from the front, because they'd feel a lot more connected to it sometimes, and see that it's not just a beautiful object, but they have a great history to them, and it's worth preserving that.
So tell me, how many times has the Mona Lisa exchanged hands during the war?
Well, the Mona Lisa was moved on 6 separate occasions, the 6th time actually being returned to Paris in 1945, when the war was completely finished in Europe. It was moved by the French museum officials to get it out of the city. The great concern being that not really theft initially as much as it was bombing. Of course, everyone saw what was taking place in London and Coventry and other cities in England. The concern was bombing, fires that would start, and the destruction of works of art. So it was believed that it was safer to get them out into countryside chateaux and villas, and in the case of Italy, to try and protect them. Of course, there then was a desire to move them, and some were moved on multiple occasions. The Mona Lisa was one that was moved ultimately down to southern France before being returned to the city.
So can you tell me offhand how many pieces of art and works of art have been recovered from the Nazis?
Well, the monuments officers in the closing days of World War II start to find literally almost 2,000 hiding places, or reports of hiding places of works of art. Sometimes it was 1 or 2 paintings, other times it was 20,000 paintings in the case of the Castle of Neuschwanstein, as a result of the great sacrifice and risk that I think one of the great heroines of modern time, Rose Valland, went to extraordinary efforts to gather this information and make it available to one of the American monuments men, Jim Rorimer. By the time, within a few months after the war, they started relocating all these things to go through them and determine what country were they taken from. By 1951, when the last monuments officer returns home, some 5 million objects have been found: paintings, statues, library books, church bells from cathedrals throughout Europe, that the monuments officers oversaw the return. But there's still hundreds of thousands of works of art and cultural documents missing today, and that's part of the ongoing work of the Monuments Men Foundation to help reunite these objects with their rightful owners.
So you would say that there's maybe another mine or another hiding place that has not yet been discovered?
Well, I think there's hiding places. You know, how many things we're going to find, we don't know. I mean, as far as a mine, I think it's unlikely, and I think there'd be great damage to these works if that was the case. But, I mean, we know just last November there was an apartment in Munich that some fellow had 1,400 works of art that have been missing since World War II. Wow. That's a dramatic example, but there were millions of soldiers walking around throughout Europe that picked things up as souvenirs, displaced persons. So I think if the objects that are missing are portable, there's a good chance they survived. If they're something that, you know, weighed 100 kilos and would require 3 or 4 people to carry them, chances are, if we haven't seen them, they may be gone. But you know, these are things worth finding and worth trying to get back to the rightful owners.
All right, well, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
That was very interesting.